so long as an attempt is made to crush a minority or force it to conform to the ways of the majority, there is no surer method of rousing the resentment of the minority and keeping it apart from the rest of the nation than to make the minority feel that it has not got the freedom to stick to its own ways. You don't have a freedom to follow your personal law. You don't have a freedom to follow your religion. If that feeling comes, that's bad. And Nehru goes on to say it matters little whether logic is on its side or whether its own particular brand of culture is worthwhile or not. The culture of a minority will be worthless, useless, absurd and irrational. It matters little. If it thinks that its culture is under decay or its culture is under threat, that is a cause of problem. The mere fact of losing it makes it dear. If they feel that my culture, my religion, my language, my script is under threat, that makes it dear. Therefore, we in India must make it clear to all that our policy is based on granting this freedom to the minorities, that they under no circumstance will be under any coercion or repression, and no coercion or repression against them will be tolerated. You now know why people hate Nehru. We can also lay down as our deliberate policy that there shall be no unfair treatment of any minority. Indeed, we should go further and state that it will be the business of the state to give favored treatment to minority and backward communities. And therefore, Nehru is so much under criticism. So my second argument is, you now know why it is important. We have come to spatial rights relevance. My second point is that minority rights are not exceptions to the general rule. They are themselves the rule. And therefore they must be followed. They are not an exception to equality. Therefore the charge of appeasement, I am not on facts. If you look at such a committee, you know how much of appeasement has been made. But I am not even on that. I am not on facts. That we are underrepresented everywhere except in jails. I am not on that. I am on a theory. And a theory is that rights of minorities are not to be negotiated either as exceptions to the general rule or as deviation from the rule. Mens rea is a rule or exception. And this is how Glenville Williams puts it. Mens rea is now part of the general criminal law. Criminal statutes are to be elliptically construed, and therefore there is no need to state mens rea. Similarly, there is no need to state minority rights. It's up there as a part of general morality, as a part of desirable principles. The idea of spatial rights of minorities is not new. The Austrian Constitution of 1867, the Hungarian Act of 1868, the Constitution of Swiss Confederation of 1874, all these incorporated minority rights. However, the question that law should protect it more directly, it came after the First World War. And if you look at the 5 treaties after the First World War, which were negotiated between the Allied and associated powers on the one hand, and Poland, Czechoslovakia, then Czechoslovakia, now you have 2 separate countries. Romania, Greece, and Yugoslavia on the other. In all these treaties, special provisions for minorities were incorporated with treaties with Austria, Bulgaria, Hungary, Turkey, and Albania. Finland and Iraq declared that they would protect their minorities. And there was more. The condition for entry to League of Nations. Your admission to League of Nations, you can become member of League of Nations only when you grant minority rights. So the treaties were to provide a model for minority rights, as the states assured equality of treatment to all inhabitants without distinction of birth, nationality, language, race, or religion. Then International Court of Justice was to play a very important role in securing minority rights through two notable judgments. One was in 1930, the Permanent Court of International Justice in an advisory opinion in Greco-Bulgarian community case. The question was, who is a minority? And as I said, this is a question I'm going to look at it. Who is a minority in India? So in this case, International Permanent Court of International Justice, it defined community not in terms of numbers, but in terms of shared religious, racial, and linguistic traditions. Traditions that the group wished to preserve and perpetuate through rituals, education, socialization of the young. And the judgment says, keep this thing in mind. That's why I said, why you need to go to the Supreme Court to say you are a minority? Hindus are a minority without going to the Supreme Court. You don't need a judgment from the court. And why court is wasting time, I am not understanding. And there is a Supreme Court judgment, by the way, in India also, which said that the recognition of a minority is a matter of fact. I am wearing a coat. You don't need a declaration by a court that it is a coat. The existence of a community ruled International Court of Justice, Permanent Court of International Justice, is not dependent upon the recognition by law. If I am less, I am less. If I am minority, I am minority. You don't read such a recognition. So this was one important development. The second was April 6, 1935 judgment from Permanent Court of International Justice in a case of minority school in Albania. The objective of minority rights, the court said, is to secure for minority groups the possibility of living peaceably alongside the rest of population and cooperating amicably with them, while at the same time underlying preserving the characteristics which distinguish them from the majority and satisfying the ensuing special needs. This is the whole jurisprudence of minority rights. You may have equality in law. Equality in law may not allow any discrimination. So you need to have a non-discrimination. You can come here, sit here. Take my chair also. Come.
It's okay.
Come here.
You can sit there.
So equality in law, Article 40, there shall be equal protection of laws, equality before law. Equality in law will demand no discrimination. But if you and me are different, we are not the same. You are a Brahmin, I am a Dalit. You are coming from an educated family which has generations of education. And I am a first generation graduate. Then we are not the same. So equality in fact may at times demands discrimination in my favor. This is reservation. And therefore minority needs that favor. It's a tragedy that you use equality to deny me that favor. And that shouldn't happen. You say any special dispensation for Muslims is not permissible. It violates equality. Article 15 says there shall be no discrimination on the basis of religion. You don't understand the whole logic of minority rights. But all these League of Nations provisions, all these 5 treaties which I talked about, they fail. The group rights incorporated in peace treaties, they failed. And why did they fail? Because you got an authoritarian regime under Hitler. You got an authoritarian regime under Mussolini. And therefore, whenever you see authoritarianism, this will not matter. Therefore, first fight authoritarianism. First fight concentration of power. First save democracy. How many of us who feel so good when I talk of minority rights are willing to sacrifice for democracy? We need to first strengthen democracy. Then only minority rights question will arise. The question of minority rights will not arise in regressive, repressive, monarchical Muslim countries. It will arise only in constitutional democracies. Successful, thriving constitutional democracies. And what happened to Jews as a minority? Prove these treaties don't matter. What Italy, fascist Italy and Nazi Germany were doing. They were themselves violating the rights of the Jew minority. But they were provoking people in other states that you are not protecting German population there. And they were invading. And that's how the Second World War started. So Second World War and First World War both were fought on the question of minority rights. And after the Second World War, the international community thought, oh, minority rights are useless, they could not protect Jews. And therefore, in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, there is no provision on minority right. This is not there at all. Because they thought more than a group right, individual rights are important. If every individual has a right, that will protect the group. Because after all, every individual is a member of a group. I am going to demolish this theory today. If I, as an individual, have a right, I have never been discriminated. I am not likely to be discriminated. Does that ensure the Muslim community will also have the same right? No. I may have best of the positions. But that does not ensure that the group to which I belong will also be secure. And therefore the realization came in 1966 that group rights are needed. And that's why you got International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And then in 1992 you got a separate Convention on Minority Rights, separate Declaration on Minority Rights. So this is about the international history on minority rights. Coming to India, and before I close it, let me just quote Justice Venkatarama Iyer in the Kerala Education Bill, who is conscious of this history. This is what he says. It is well known that during Middle Ages, the accepted notion was that sovereigns were entitled to impose their own religion on their subjects. And those who did not conform to it could be dealt with as traitors. It was this notion that was responsible for the 16th and 17th centuries for numerous wars between nations and for civil wars in the continent of Europe. And it was only laterly that it became to be recognized that freedom of religion is not incompatible with good citizenship and loyalty to the state, and that all progressive societies should respect the religious beliefs of their minorities. It is this concept which is embodied in Article 25, 26, 27, 28, 29 and 30. Every constitution basically is a compact. Every constitution basically it is an agreement between people and the state. It's a sacred covenant. What is the first principle of law of contract? If you and me make a contract, if there is a breach of a contract, parties are restored to original position. There is no agreement. And if there is no agreement, there is no state. The Indian citizens, through the constitution, have made a social contract with Indian state. And this social contract includes protection of minority rights. So constitutional pact with minorities, I concede, has to be a product of history. It is certainly a historical pact that has to be accorded respect. And such pacts are to be treated as sacrosanct. The country was partitioned in the name of religion. Very unfortunate partition. Because the whole philosophy of two-nation theory was flawed. Countries are not made in the name of religion. Otherwise, you should have one United States of Islam. All Muslim countries should be part of it. Why are they fighting against each other? And you should have one United States of Christians. Why are Christian countries fighting this 100 years war, 30 years war, world war? They were all between Christian states. Religions don't make nations. Therefore, those who believe that Hindus and Muslims are two different nations were wrong. We are a one nation. I am with Advani ji on Akhand Bharat. And this idea of Pakistan was flawed. After the partition, Pakistan became an Islamic state. In fact, that also has a history. Jinnah addressing Pakistan Constituent Assembly, and also when leaving India, telling Indian Muslims, oh, you live in peace with Hindus, and telling Muslims in Pakistan, don't talk of religion. Pakistan will be a secular state. Religion will be a private matter. If religion is a private matter, why you made a country? But it became an Islamic state. And therefore, when we were drafting a constitution, Mahavir Tyagi said, let us wait on the question of minority rights. We will give only those rights to minorities in India which Pakistan is giving to its minorities in Pakistan. Now again, one has to hate Nehru and Ambedkar and others who said, what nonsense! What Pakistan does to its minorities is irrelevant. We are a different nation with different principles, with different ideology. And therefore, the case of minority rights in India is independent of what Pakistan does. And of course, Pakistan does very badly. With Christian minorities, with Hindu minorities, with Ahmadiyas and Qadianis. They have highly regressive laws. And that's why they failed as a country. My worry in 2018 is we did not adopt Pakistan in 47 because we had very powerful, enlightened leaders. Are we going that way? And if we are going the same way as Pakistan, then of course our country will be under threat. Our nation will also be in problem. Anyone who gives prominence to religion in public life, anyone who wants to convert a democracy into a theocracy is bound to fail. And therefore, let us not go that path. Let us not go that path. So in India, I come back to the question of why you need special rights and why 14 is not enough. My first argument is there is nothing in individual right to culture that will guarantee the good which that particular right is a right to. We can assert that an individual has a right to something, but we are asserting a right that may not be there. Therefore, in order to render the right to culture meaningful, it is important that a supportive social and political environment be instituted to enable that culture to flourish. You say, I have a right to culture. It is an individual's right. It means nothing. I have a right to my language, and there is nobody around with whom I talk in classical Urdu language. Nobody around with whom I use that classical humor. So you need that spaces in which my religion, in which my language, in which my culture will flourish. Now, if you are a democratic state and you have right to equality, a state cannot create a space for your religion. In fact, a state must stay away from my religion and from the religion of everybody else. A state cannot promote any language. That's why in India we do not have any national language. Hindi is only an official language. So a state cannot create officially under its patronage the needed space for my culture to flourish. That is prohibited. And therefore you need minority institutions. So Jamia creates that space. Aligarh creates that space where my culture, my language, my script is preserved. And that is the whole logic. Right to culture will be meaningless if that supportive environment is not created. If I don't have Professor Kehkashan and Professor Nuzhat to talk in Urdu, then that environment is not there. So that environment is to be there. That's why Dworkin says, since cultural narratives are a precondition for making intelligent judgment about how to lead our lives, we must protect societal cultures from debasement and decay. Cultures are valuable because through access to societal cultures, we have access to range of meaningful options. But the survival of culture is by no means guaranteed if you just have an individual's right to culture. Therefore, where and whenever culture is under threat or culture is under debasement, it must be protected. And Dworkin in his characteristic style says, we inherited a cultural structure and we have some duty out of simple justice to leave that structure at least as rich as we found it. Now, once the existence of culture is ensured, it is the duty of the state to ensure that minority groups are not subjected to demeaning and perverse stereotype or targeting for following that culture. So I will never be targeted as Faizan Mustafa. But if my group, constituent group is targeted, ridiculed. That hurts. That pains. Because every individual has a right to live with dignity. My dignity is compromised when my community is condemned. My dignity is compromised when my language is not given its due. And my dignity is seriously undermined when I don't have the freedom to follow my religion. Slighting my culture, holding it up for ridicule, denying its value, and so on, hurts me, offends my dignity. And it is particularly offensive if this ridicule comes from those in power. Then it hurts. Therefore, the implication of all this is clear that collective rights are needed to establish the preconditions for the exercise of individual right to culture. We may now add to this proposition on individual and collective rights, which I outlined here, some more dimensions. Individuals should possess the right to cultural community because community is of overriding importance. Secondly, an individual right to culture holds little meaning or significance unless the community of which a person is a member or is identified with is accorded the right to exist in a viable form and flourish. Since it is the minority community which will be under threat, since it is the minority community which is vulnerable, the Constitution will give special protection to the minority community. The reason is this, the jurisprudential justification is this. If a group of which the individual is part is made the object of perverse and demeaning stereotypes that lay it open to either disrespect or deleterious action, the individual suffers both in terms of self-respect and at times survival. Individual life, dignity and self-respect require a precondition that the constituent group is respected and not made subject of ridicule or hatred or discrimination. And therefore the move from individual rights to group rights. Why you need group rights? Because just because I have a right to equality or right to dignity, that does not ensure the existence of my group being given the dignity and the right to survival. Now this is the theoretical framework. Now very quickly let me talk of issues like who is a minority. So Indian Supreme Court, globally there are two tests. One is called the numerical inferiority test. If you are less than 50%, you are a minority. The other is called the powerlessness test. If in the power structure of the state, you are powerless, then you are a minority. Indian Supreme Court adopted the numerical inferiority test. And it said, since Article 30 says minorities, whether based on religion or language, shall have the right to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice, since linguistic and religious minorities are coming together, the minority will not be defined nationally. It is to be defined at the state level. Now you have religious minority, you also have linguistic minority. The rights of both are same. So if I am a Tamil Brahmin, I come to Delhi, I can set up a Tamil minority institution in Delhi, even though I am a Hindu. Similarly, if I am a Brahmin of UP, I go to Tamil Nadu, I will set up a Hindi medium or a Urdu medium school there and it will be a minority institution. That's why I said, just like disability. अभी आपका हाथ टूट जाए, डिसेबल हो जाते हैं ना. So we get temporary disability status. Similarly, the minority status, each one of us experience at one time or another in our life. As we move, and there is a right to movement within India, which is a fundamental right. Therefore, where is the communalism in minority rights? Where is an appeasement? Hindus too are a minority. Hindus do set up minority institutions. I am aware of at least 100 Sindhi minority institutions which are run all by Hindus, including medical colleges. You have very few religious minority institutions, largely of Christians, and now of some Muslims in South. Still we make this appeasement bogie. Where is an appeasement? When Aligarh Muslim University case was being argued in Allahabad, I was the registrar. So one day, the Chief Justice A.N. Ray, whose father was also Chief Justice with the same initial A.N. Ray of ADM Jabalpur type, same A.N. Ray who superseded seniors and became the Chief Justice. He was choice of Indira Gandhi, a committed judge. So his son A.N. Ray, he said, how are you a minority? Muslims are not a minority. And I was lost. With all my teaching of constitutional law, I am standing behind, and I am lost. In fact, the story, let me give an earlier story. The earlier story was that before the single judge bench, Gopal Subramaniam was arguing for the Union of India. And Justice Arun Tandon, who recently retired, he said, were Muslims minority at the time of establishment of university in 1920? So Gopal Subramaniam was arguing and I was standing behind. So I tried to whisper, yes sir. He didn't listen. Then I again tried. Then I went near and I said, sir, yes, they were a minority. Then I gave a slip. Yes, I am confident, say they were a minority in 1920. So on this tip off from me, he said, well, they were a minority, the judge did not believe. The Solicitor General of India was not believed. And he was asked to, and the Census Commissioner of India was asked to file a affidavit. Now, Census Commissioner did not file an affidavit and there was a next date. So Gopal Subramaniam said, I will not appear. Because there is no affidavit from Census Commissioner. So I filed an affidavit on my behalf in my name. And I made a table from Census 1 till that time, 2001. One table of UP, one table of nationally. In all census, Muslims have been a minority. Therefore, this debate was abandoned before the single judge. But it was reopened before the divisional bench. And they said, there is a threat of extinction to Muslim community. You are 15 crore, where is the threat? If there is a threat, then I accept you as a minority. So Dhawan was arguing, for half a day he argued the whole minority jurisprudence. The judge was not convinced. So I had a student in Minorities Commission. In the evening I found him, I said, yaar wo 1982 when Minorities Commission was set up, a GO was issued that following communities are minority, Parsis, Muslims, Christians, this and Buddhists. Get me that GO. I said, sir, मैं तो यहाँ रहता हूँ. कौन सी जगह? I'm forgetting the name. Pitampura, yeah. मैंने कहा, you have to go. So he went there. By 9 o'clock, he sent fax to me. and hotel's fax machine was not working, so I have to run from pillar to post at different PCOs at that time and giving different numbers. And he's trying. Finally, I got it. I brought it, gave it to Dhawan. Dhawan said, "What nonsense, Mustafa? If it is a geo, it can be struck down. The claim of a minority, you only told me, is independent of any geo." I said yes. Next day in the arguments, again judge was not relenting, and Dhawan used that also. And what Dhawan had predicted, the judge said the same thing. Oh, we strike it down. Just 1 minute before lunch. And then Dhawan threw all books and everything. The case is not, I was also in a depression. Because there is nothing in the case if Muslims are not even a minority. On merit, the case is not going to be discussed. So he put everything like this and just went 2 steps backward and said, if you continue to insist, my lord, threat of extinction, which is not a test. The test is only numerical inferiority or powerlessness. Muslim meet both the tests. Supreme Court, 5-judge bench, 11-judge bench, a 7-judge bench, they have all said that anyone who is less than 50% is a minority. You are bound by a judicial discipline. The judge was not relenting. He said, if you continue to insist on threat of extinction, kindly recall Gujarat genocide. There is a threat to extinction. And that's how this debate was abandoned. In that judgment, there is no reference of this. But within months, within 2-3 months, another bench of Allahabad High Court, Justice Srivastav, did hold that Muslims are not a minority. Of course, subsequently, Supreme Court stayed the judgment. But if I can give you a parallel, there was a case about a medical college in Amritsar, a Sikh minority institution. Now, there was a GO of Punjab government declaring Sikhs to be a minority. At what level minorities are defined? Center or state? State. Are Sikhs in minority in Punjab? The judgment of Justice Kher, who subsequently became Chief Justice of India, and what was the matter? I had written 2 articles on that judgment also. The question was very interesting. Some Sikh girls and boys were admitted under the Sikh quota. They were asked to give an affidavit. In their name there is Kaur and Sikh. They believe in Guru Granth Sahib. They believe in Kesh and this and that. And they believe in all the tenets of Sikh religion. They were admitted. Then a medical examination was done. And it was found out, oh, the girls have made eyebrows. I had to write a powerful article that minority rights does not mean doing policing like this. And the question went up to the court. And the court upheld it, by the way. But the court did not prove, like in Allahabad when it was a question about Muslims who were a minority in UP, this question. Subsequently, in another matter, Punjab and Haryana High Court said Sikhs are not a minority, and the matter is now pending in Supreme Court. Last year, some hearing also happened on this. So somebody who was a majority was considered minority. And somebody who was a minority was not considered minority. And that's not right. That's not right. So on the question of who is a minority, you now know it is to be defined at the level of a state. Both linguistic as well as religious minorities are entitled to same rights. Then there is another word in Article 30. minorities, whether based on religion or language, shall have a right to establish educational institutions of their choice. What is the meaning of choice? Can we have a university? And the Supreme Court said yes, educational institution will include education at all levels, including a university. So there can be an IIT, there can be a National Law University, and there can be a Central University also under Article 30. And the court went on to say, choice means choice. Can you limit choice? There is no limitation in word choice. And therefore it is within the power of the minorities to expand their choice as much as they want. So it is your choice. You can set up any educational institution. On TV there has been ill-informed debate on a number of channels. And what the anchors at the top of their voice have been shouting, oh, how you are an aided institution, you take aid, how can you be a minority? Read Article 30, Clause 2. In granting aid, state shall not discriminate against an institution which has been established by a minority. Therefore, my case and Delhi University case, every year's request for budget, it is to be decided on merit. So aid does not dilute the minority character. Aid is irrelevant to the question of minority status. So much so that the Supreme Court has gone to the extent of saying, in granting aid, state cannot impose conditions which are destructive of the minority character. So when you are coming up with regulations, those regulations, if they destroy my character, they are null and void. They are unconstitutional. The court came up with a dual test. If there is a regulation, this regulation is to be tested. One, is it reasonable? Is it reasonable? Two, does this regulation make that institution an effective vehicle of minority education? Minority institutions are primarily for the minorities. This is again Supreme Court has said. So can you have reservation, not have reservation? Supreme Court itself said a minority institution is primarily for the minority which has established it, and there shall be only sprinkling of outsiders. And then the court justifies why this is sprinkling of outsiders. Just now I told you as to the justification of minority rights, that I need spaces for my culture, my language, my religion to flourish. The court said, that's fine. Your language, your culture, your religion can flourish if you have your own people. But that is not enough. You must pass on your culture to others, your language to others, your religion to others, so you have outsiders. So there is a purpose for that outsiders also. My culture, my language is to be transmitted to those who are not members of my community. That is the reason of having outsiders. The other word was the establishment. How do you interpret establishment? And you have all kinds of meaning given in dictionaries. Does establishment only mean bringing into existence? And the whole argument, oh, if Parliament brought into existence, then definitely you are not a minority institution. The Attorney General saying it on record in 2016. And I had to write a PowerPoint piece. What are we saying? And that pains me much more as a student of constitutional law. The whole argument goes like this: if you are a minority university, Parliament can't establish you. You are to be established by the minority. And you cannot be aided. I just told you aid has no meaning. Why Parliament cannot establish a university for promoting a fundamental right? It's strange. In a parliamentary democracy, a government is arguing against Parliament. Or if Parliament is superior, we say that you are responsible to Parliament. It is the first principle of the parliamentary democracy that the government is responsible to Parliament. It will remain in power only so long it enjoys confidence of Parliament. Otherwise, no confidence motion aayega. Yes? We never say that we have executive government. We say we have parliamentary government. If you have parliamentary government, what is the bar under Article 13? The bar under Article 13 is that you will not pass a law which violates fundamental rights. Therefore, Mr. Attorney General is wrong. Parliament is prohibited from passing a law which is in contravention or violation of fundamental rights. Is Article 30 a fundamental right? Yes. So if Parliament passes a law to promote Article 30, how can it be null and void? And the government is not able to defend Parliament. Once Parliament passes a law, it is the duty of a government, incumbent government, to defend Parliament. You cannot abandon Parliament. That is strange. An executive abandoning the parent body. The parent body is Parliament. And therefore, in my opinion, when Parliament passes a law in reverence to the wishes of a community, just because the community has pooled resources, just because the community has expressed the desire, and Parliament passes a law, Parliament does not really establish in the true sense of establishment. It facilitates. It facilitates. That facilitation in your case happened decades after. That facilitation in a legal case happened decades after 45 years. In a legal. And there is nothing in Indian Constitution which bars Parliament from setting up a university for a particular community or a particular group, if what the Supreme Court has said, the initiative has come from a member of a community. The Supreme Court has said the initiative is to be taken by any philanthropic from that community. So Parliament may not take an initiative, even though on my interpretation it may, if the initiative is not coming from the community. To help a community, Parliament also can straight away pass a law. And finally, to end, so that I give you some time for discussions. All fundamental rights, framers of Indian Constitution have subjected to restrictions. So Article 19, freedom of speech and expression. इकबाल भाई लिए हुए हैं कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, देखिए आर्टिकल 19(2) में as many as 8 restrictions are given. Freedom of speech and expression is subject to sovereignty, integrity, friendly relation, defamation, incitement, contempt of court, public order है. Show me where is a restriction in Article 29. Where is a restriction in Article 30? So framers of Indian Constitution in their wisdom have not subjected minority rights to to any restrictions, and that's why they are a kind of absolute rights. Not absolute in the sense that the Vice Chancellor Sahab will say, for Jamia Millia, even a 10 pass can be taken as assistant professor. No. You have to take 55% NET or PhD. Because any regulation which promotes standards, you can't say, I will not take the permission from the municipal board. I am a minority institution. You can't say, oh, we will not follow this UGC rule that for every room, 8 rooms of the hostel, there should be 1 toilet. So sanitary restrictions, health restrictions, municipal restrictions, they can come in. But otherwise they are absolute because they are not subject to any restriction. Minority rights have to be absolute in a democracy so that majoritarianism does not take over. Why you have judicial review? In a majoritarian, in a democracy, the majority elect people. Those elected people pass a law. They pass a law as per the wishes of the people. Why then judges sitting in Supreme Court who have not been elected or in High Court can strike down a law passed by the, say, unanimously passed by Lok Sabha or unanimously passed by Rajya Sabha? As happened in NJC, Lok Sabha passed unanimously. Rajya Sabha passed near unanimity with Jethmalani not voting for it. 5 judges of Supreme Court throwing it in a dustbin. Protecting Constitution and protecting minorities so that the majority does not take advantage of its numbers. That's why you have power of judicial review. Therefore, my thesis is minority rights are not an exception. Minority rights are a rule and an absolute rule for any successful democracy. Thank you.